Hello, my name is Sean Gerard, and this is my error analysis video. So to start out, for number one, we have the division problem with the polynomials. And after I worked it out, I did synthetic division, and I come to find out that the sign in front of the 8 is mixed up because with the right answer it is +8, and on this it is -8. And also the last number is way off because of a mistake made right here. The mistake is they added 52 and 64 to get 116, which is what they have as the last number right here as the remainder. But as you can see, it's -52 plus 64, which would be 12. So after I did my synthetic division and I got the final answer, I was able to see that the problem with this first question is the sign is the opposite of what it should be in front of 8, and the -52 and 64 were not added correctly, and that is why the answer is way off with the remainder at the end. Moving on to number 2, with stating the possible rational roots for each equation. So they have -1 as a root, which is correct, and they have 4 is not a root, which is also correct. But I went ahead and finished out the problem and by doing this, and I figured out that the roots are 1/4 and 1 and -1. So they already had -1 as a root. I just finished it out and found out that 1 and 1/4 are also roots. Moving on to number 3 with the quadratic formula. The first thing I did was move the 7x over to the left so I can equal it to 0. So now I have 5x squared minus 7x minus 34 equals 0. Now I can do my problem with the quadratic formula. I have a equals 5, b equals -7, and c equals -34. And this is where the person messed up right here, because as you can see, they have 5 as b and 7 as a. That is not correct, because once you get the -7 moved over, it's A, B, and C in that order. So after I did the quadratic formula, I got the square root of 729, or 7 plus or minus the square root of 729 over 10, which is 27. So I did 7 plus 27 over 10, which was 34 over 10. Simplify that to 17 over 5. And then I also did 7 minus 27 over 10, which is -20 over 10 for -2. So the problem with this, like I said, was just mixing up the 5 and the 7, and it completely changed the whole problem, as you can see with the final answer that they got compared to mine. Moving on to number 4. Identifying the holes and the asymptotes of the equation or the graph. So for this one, the holes was half right. The x equals 4 is a hole, but you also have to find the other one, which there was only one up here, so I was able to find that as 1/6. So those two are the holes, and then the asymptotes on this one are actually correct. The vertical asymptote is x equals 1. The horizontal asymptote is y equals 0. And the graph is also correct. So this problem was not a lot wrong with this one except just missing one of the holes. Moving on to number 5. This is adding and subtracting and also multiplying with imaginary numbers with the I. And it can be tricky if you do not follow along carefully. So after doing mine and getting the numbers added up where they should be, I was able to come out with the answer of 50 plus 26i. This person had 50 plus 43i. And they messed up right in here because they got 35i and 8i, whereas I had 35i, negative 3i, and negative 6i, which equals 26i. So in here, they messed up with negative 2, negative 6, and negative I, which would be negative 9i. But they did something wrong right here in order to get 43i. They did not include this. They just did negative 2i minus 6i, and then they got this part wrong with the plus 8i. So this one was all messed up, and that is why it came out as 43i instead of my 26i. Moving on to number 6. So this one is finding the vertex, the y-intercept, and if it's opening up or down, and also sketching the graph. So right off the bat, the graph is completely wrong. It's opening down when it's actually opening up, and the coordinates are all off the graphing plots. So when I did this, I found the vertex to be -1, -1. I did that by putting x equals -4 over 2 with 2 in parentheses, which comes out at -1. And then I found the y by substituting that -1 into the equation, and I come out with -1 with 2 minus 4 plus 1. So the vertex is -1, -1. The y-intercept I come to find is 0, 1. I did that by simply substituting 0 in for the equation. I got 0 plus 1 equals 1. And the graph, I sketched it right here. I was able to find the points of the vertex at -1, 1. Also, -2, 1, and 0, 1 were the other graphing points for this one. So that graph compared to this one, pretty different from those two. And they have the y-intercept b equals 1. That is correct, or equals 1. But the vertex and the open up or down is also correct, but the vertex was not correct. So that was a big one right there, figuring out the graph, how it opens up instead of down, and figuring out the vertex and the y-intercept. Number 7, this is just completing the square. So I simply, for this one, I plus 7 on both sides to equal it to 0. I got x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. And then I simply just factored it. What is going to give me -2 when I subtract these, and what's going to give me that when I multiply them. So 2 minus 4 is -2, and then -4 times 2 is -8. So I got those two, and I set them equal to 0. X equals 4, x equals -2. That one was pretty simple. The person right here, they added 15 to both sides, which is where they made the mistake. And as you can see, they got a completely different answer. They got 4, but they missed the -2. The last one with the slope-intercept form, I simply took these two equations and I got them to where I got the y by itself, and I got these two equations right here at the bottom. The equations over here are actually very similar. The bottom one is correct, but the top one, the sign is facing the wrong way. It has greater than, and it should be less than. And the graph is almost right, except for this little part right here. This part was not shaded in at all. And as you can see, I shaded in right here on my paper, but that has to be shaded in because that is where they cross, and that is where both graphs are. That's where they meet right there. That is what they share. But other than that, this was right and this was right. So I just had to shade that in right there to make that correct. I just had to change that sign from greater than to less than. That is it for my video. Thank you for watching.